Ambassador Monteblanco,
Here.
Alfredo Moreno.
Here.
Okay, so there was no action resulting from executive session today, so we will be moving to audience time. And I don't believe we had testimony, is that right? Oh, we did. Okay.
We have one.
Okay, then I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. So this is testimony emailed in from Wendy Kroger, John Griffiths, Tom Hort, and Dick Scouten. And their addresses are all a part of this letter, so we can put that on the record then. Regarding Cooper Mountain Nature Park expansion and budget request. We submitted testimony at your October 13th board meeting regarding the Cooper Mountain Nature Park CMNP expansion. At that time, we indicated our goal is to complete CMNP as sought by the public by adding at least 250 acres to the current park. This vision has been highlighted in 3 consecutive Metro Parks and Nature Bond measures beginning in 1995. We requested 3 actions of you in October. Tonight, we focus on your upcoming 22-23 budget. We request that both THPRD and the City of Beaverton budget sufficient resources in the next year to ensure adequate field research, public agency coordination, public engagement, and due diligence to ensure the appropriate local land use zoning, including the potential use of an overlay mechanism to ensure a successful outcome for the CMNP expansion. In the course of THPRD's upcoming budget process, please set aside and fund adequate resources to further these next steps. We believe system development charges are appropriate for this proposal. The City of Beaverton is considering the approval of a new staff position that would coordinate with public agencies and stakeholders while managing preliminary engineering and design work for McKernan Creek and other key infrastructure. The City of Beaverton is also moving on its Cooper Mountain Community Plan with public engagement to be featured prominently in the next year. We understand that THPRD and the City of Beaverton Clean Water Services Metro and possibly Washington County plan to convene soon to determine the scope of work on Cooper Mountain. Since we testified in October, we have met with Metro's Conservation Director, the Cooper Mountain Lead Planner for the City of Beaverton, and attended both the city's Cooper Mountain Community Advisory Committee and Metro's latest 2019 Parks and Nature Bond Measure status briefing. At the city's Cooper Mountain Advisory Committee meeting, we reiterated that THPRD is the city's park provider. We have upcoming meetings with Clean Water Services and various interested nonprofit organizations. Attached is documentation from the city regarding Cooper Mountain area road options, scenarios A, B, and C, as well as the McKernan Creek Greenway concept. Please note that scenario C avoids almost all creek crossings. Roads are a major challenge for wildlife in natural areas. It offers more tree canopy advantage and greater natural resource protection. It is the only scenario that includes a community park. The area needs ball fields, and all 3 scenarios emphasize the importance of expanding the nature park. Additional ground research is needed to determine the strongest water quality management scenarios for nature resource protection. And I'll end it at there. Doug, do you want to respond to this testimony?
Sure. We're without Janine this evening, but we certainly can review next month in a little more detail. But we have been in a variety of meetings. The work the city is doing is going to give us a good deal of the framework, and as they move towards zoning, which is going to be a critical outcome for that northern Cooper Mountain area, that'll really help determine the lay of the land, and of course density and transfer of density. All of these are, the transportation needs are significant in that area. A lot of moving parts, and of course Metro holds the money for the land acquisition, so we're having a lot of conversations with them as well. But some of this is certainly executive session material, but we certainly can bring the board a further update in January, particularly based on some of the baseline information the city is opening up on now.
Thank you, Doug. And Jessica, just for the record, this testimony and the scenarios, the maps will be on record within our meeting minutes for the
Correct.
public?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you, Wendy, John, Tom, and Dick for submitting this. And I think that's it for public testimony for this evening.
Thank you, Heidi. Okay, so next we will move on to committee liaisons. Who wants to go first? Anybody? Alfredo.
All right. One of the things that came out of the Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee meeting was in response to a discussion about the Aloha Swim Center not reopening at this time, and it was essentially just a recommendation to specify why the district opted to have certain swim centers open and others not, and just kind of to either to better communicate or be more transparent with the decision or the data that influenced those decisions. So I did want to pass that along. I thought that was a good thought there. And I'll just touch quickly on my other committee, the Tualatin Hills Parks Foundation successfully was able to generate $10,000 towards its senior pass campaign. I believe that helped 200 seniors have a monthly pass to the LC Stir Center as we get those folks back in action. So that was great news there. So thanks.
Lisa.
Some non-committee stuff. I met with Jenny, new city manager at Beaverton. Delightful. I encourage you all to get to know her. And then I did want to highlight the summit about childcare with Mayor Beatty, but President Ping took the lead, so I'm going to let her talk about it. Thank you.
Barbie or Heidi? Heidi?
Yes, just a quick update. Pension Committee met on December 2nd to get a recap of this last quarter, and this last quarter was relatively slow with very little, just a little uptick in change in the pension program, but overall good news at this point in time. Thank you, Felicita, for not being able to go to the preschool for all committee meeting because I got to go, and fascinating work that they're doing, and I'm so glad we got to hear from them in our work session because I think we're going to be able to have some great impacts there. And at the end of next week, our audit committee will be meeting, so I'll have an update for you in the next month.
Barbie, any updates?
I don't have anything to share.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, so I'll go. Yeah, so like Felicita said, her and I were part of a child care summit that was hosted by Mayor Beatty, and that brought together Beaverton School District, some elected leaders from there. We were obviously there, and then some of the mayor's team was there, and then some county commissioners were there. And so we were all there to just start the conversation of hopefully how and if we can expand potential after school care in conjunction between THPRD and BSD, or even the bigger conversation of, potential funding and all of that kind of stuff. So it was really exciting. It was just very minimal. Everybody was said that they were in and wanted to figure out a way to do that. So we will likely have sent our staff to do the due diligence and start talking between BSD and THPRD to see what potentially that may look like before we have to evaluate funding and all that kind of stuff. And we can look at space and needs and all that kind of stuff and do a really thorough look at it. But it's very exciting that both of our teams and the city and the county are ready to support something as we start to move forward. So it should be a very exciting endeavor to show how local government can work together. But very, like I said, again, very preliminary, lots and lots of work to do, but it was an exciting conversation, definitely. Okay, next up we have consent agenda. Do I have a motion from anybody?
Sure. I move that the board approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Do I have a second?
This is Felicitas, second.
Jessica, do you take the vote?
Alfredo Moreno,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Elisa de Monteblanco,
Yes.
Barbie Minor,
Yes.
Tia Ping.
Yes. Perfect. And now we are moving to unfinished business, where I believe Holly is presenting today.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm Holly Thompson, your communications director, and it's my privilege tonight to give you an update on district operations. This is an opportunity to share all of the good work happening throughout the district by all of our colleagues, following up on your last update from August. So on the next slide, we'll look at the topics that we're going to cover. We'll continue, as we've discussed, looking at our financial snapshot and our revised spending plans. We'll look at some of the issues that we have been balancing all year, from staffing and what's going on in our facilities. I've got some exciting updates on our diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility work that we've done over the last few months, a snapshot on how we did at winter registration, a little bit of an update on a project I'm not sure you've heard about before, but our team has done some great work on our healthcare partners, evaluating the programs that we use and making recommendations for moving forward. We'll get a quick update on the affiliate review process, which you've been intimately involved in, an update on after school care as well, following up on what Tia talked about. And then again, a quick snapshot of how we're looking ahead to, it's not just the holiday season, it's budget season, yay! Okay, next slide. So let's look at our financial plan. This slide probably looks really familiar because it is exactly what you saw in August. What we're demonstrating is that we appropriated a full budget. So we did appropriations for the full amount of $64.6 million. But as you know, we went into it knowing that we were going to continue to have impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic, from labor shortages, from adjustments to how people have typically used our services. And so we have adjusted and adopted a revised spending plan showing that we expect to spend about $59 million. Our finance department has closed the books on the month of October, but November and December are very important months as well. November is when the property tax revenues start to come in and we see the realization of those. Winter is when we start to look at our winter registration numbers and how that went in December. So while we're still holding the line and doing really well, and the snapshot at the end of October was we're still within our revised spending plan, we're watching this really closely. And we're talking in the next quarter, you might see some adjustments here as we've gotten more information going through the year. Staff are being conservative, nimble, flexible. We're watching it closely month to month and paying attention to how we're doing. On the next slide, we'll talk about staffing. It is the conversation nationally. Every day I open my phone, I look at my news sites, I see about great resignations, I see about amazing offers. I learn about how people are really leading with their values and making decisions about where they want to work, but based on their values and their lifestyle needs. All of that to say that while we are continuing to experience what everyone is experiencing right now, which is the challenges of labor shortages, we still have 300 openings approximately. You can see the distribution of where those openings are at. Aquatics continues to be a big challenge for us among many other positions, but over half of those vacancies are in aquatics. That compounds the impact of why we can't open all of our swim facilities because we don't have the labor to be able to do so. But Christine Hoffman and our colleagues in Human Resources put some really great information together for us that I want to share with you. The first data point is that the district's time to fill vacant positions is down 24% from last year. And that's due to the work of our officials that are hiring from our department liaisons and from human resources. We're really doing all we can to get rid of the bureaucratic clutter that makes it hard to get people in the door, make the process more accessible, really keeping an eye on our equity values, but making it easier to get through the process. 83% of the people hired over the past year were specifically looking for a job at THPRD. And they shared that they were specifically interested in THPRD, and it wasn't just like a job off a job board or a website. So we continue to see this. I can tell you anecdotally, I've been in a couple of hiring processes over the last month, and I heard that from candidates over and over again. They talked about the organizational values. They talked about the board values. Thank you so much for leading with values and really helping tell our story. They talked about public service and how important what THPRD does and how that really aligns with their sense of what they want. So that's an exciting, positive thing that we're seeing in our hiring. Since the last operations update in August, the district has hired 288 people. That's hired, rehired, or promoted. Of those, 24 were regular status employees hired since August. 11 were promoted from within, most from part-time or seasonal positions. 4 returned to the district after some time away, and 9 are new to THPRD. And I really, on behalf of Christine, want to underscore the importance of that pipeline hiring. Just like you heard in the work session, how important development is, career path. When we did our organizational assessment in 2019, we committed to really look at that part-time career path development. So it's really exciting to see that progression and change. So while the number's the same, 300 in August to 300 in December, I want to also kind of underscore that some of that is seasonal, right? Like we do a lot of hiring for particular activities. So think in the fall, we had basketball leagues starting, and we had the coaches and the refs. So there's lots of positions that are cyclical that come and go, but there has been also a lot of turnover. On the next slide, we're going to see talk about the Conestoga Remodel. And I know that you've had some information already about this, but this really is a big project, and we want to underscore the importance of this one. We're renovating the entire pool area at Conestoga. We expect the construction to conclude by the end of January of 2022. We don't have a date yet for reopening, but we will be excited to announce one as we get closer to project completion. We expect to be able to welcome people back sometime in February. The project will improve pool access with a new deck, handrails, and ADA lifts. A fresh coat of paint, new ceiling lights, and new underwater lights will also brighten the pool room. In addition, visitors will have more changing room options and enjoy radiant floor heating that will warm the entry hallway to the pools. And we still have other pools open at the Aquatic Center, Beaverton Swim Center, and Raleigh Swim Center. On the next slide, we're just going to talk for a second about facilities. The majority of our facilities are open, but we still do feel the pain from the public. And, we share the pain of not being able to have every one of our swim centers open. Director Alfreda, I want to thank you for your comment of sharing what was said at the Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee. I made note of that, and we'll definitely be following up and adding that into our communications. And while we do have the majority of our facilities open, I just also wanted to underscore that we are seeing changes to how we are able to operate those facilities. Not every facility is open on the weekend. Some are open only one day. Some are closed the whole weekend. We have reduced hours. And a lot of that is due to our labor shortages and the vacancies that you've seen in other positions. So all of that to say that we're balancing everything we can right now. We're doing the best we can, and we share and empathize with the pain that the people who love these facilities are experiencing, because we're feeling it too. On the next slide. So this is really fun. We get to talk about some of the amazing, and this is diversity, equity, inclusion, and access work happening, really focusing on our external efforts. And all of these are activities that have happened since your update in August. So first off, I'd like to begin celebrating Welcoming Week, which was happened in September of 2021. We hosted 2 welcoming walks with the city under the city of Beaverton's umbrella of Welcoming Week. We partnered with Venezuela's Voice in Oregon and Ventiva de Salud from the Mexican consulate and participated in 2 bilingual walks at Greenway Park and at HMT. These activities are part of a nationwide effort from Welcoming America that unites agencies and organizations to celebrate and welcome our immigrant and refugee communities. Attendees collaborated in the creation of a welcoming tree and participated in a message garden activity, as well as a Tai Chi class. And this event was also done in partnership and with support from Metro. Next year, we're going to do this even bigger. So for 2022, we've joined the Welcoming America organization. And I'm really happy to say that we are committed to giving toolkits and having welcoming activities in every single one of our centers. So while we won't be under the city's umbrella, we're stepping up to join Welcoming America as our own organization. We'll be our own partner. We'll cross-promote and share calendars with the city of Beaverton activities, but we really wanted to up our game and do more than 2 or 3 welcoming walks and really make sure we have activities district-wide going on all over the place. So really excited about that. We also hosted vaccination clinics. THPRD collaborated with medical teams International, Kaiser Permanente, and Venezuela's Voice in Oregon, and the delivery of vaccination clinics during summer events. Vaccinations included the Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Moderna vaccines. We did a little Latino entrepreneur event at Bethany Creek Park. The event was hosted by THPRD and Tradiciones, and with the participation of the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber. The youth participated from 6 to 11 years of age, and they showcased their art, their products, and services to community members. And the objective of Tradiciones is to develop entrepreneurship with Latinx youth in the Beaverton area. We participated in Semana Binational de la Salud in October. THPRD attended and supported the Binational Health Week organized by Centro Cultural and the Mexican Consulate. It's a nationwide effort to provide access to wellness and healthcare for Latinx and Spanish-speaking communities. In October, we did the amazing talking walls at the HMT complex. The theme was belonging with the youth, supporting concepts of community, resiliency, youth presence, and home. We worked with Color Outside the Lines, the Five Oaks Museum, and invited Latinx artists and youth to participate in our 4th Talking Walls. Additional to the mural painting session, youth participated in a songwriting workshop with Joaquin Lopez to co-create a corrido song to be played at the end of the event. And we also had space for conversation and crafts celebrating Hispanic and Latinx culture. They're awesome. Our final artist, who actually wasn't able to cross the border, is coming this weekend. So we'll be on site with him on Sunday, and he'll be painting the final mural, and they'll be finished up, and then we'll go back and coat them and protect them. But super excited about those. We hosted our first Dia de los Muertos community celebration in November. I'm wearing a shirt I bought there, so I just wanted to show off that we had merchants and goods there, and I love this shirt. So it was held at the Garden Home Rec Center. It was a day of ceremony, dance, and in celebration of Dia de los Muertos. It was free in partnership with Beaverton Rise and the city of Beaverton. I want to emphasize it was a co-produced event, which comes with its opportunities and challenges. So, you know, we learned a lot, and we are growing and improving, and I expect it will be back in new and better ways next year. The event included a traditional dance, arts and crafts, food, a loteria games, and spaces to share the tradition of Dia de los Muertos. We also hosted Centro de Bienvenida this past weekend, helping families register for winter session. And at the end of the month, we'll be working with the Beaverton Black Parent Union on a holiday celebration for Kwanzaa coming up on December 29th. And finally, super excited, and so thank you so much for this, we filled the financial aid position. So for the first time in a year and a half, we have the financial aid position filled. We were able to welcome back to the district Juan Calles, who worked for us for 8 years as a program coordinator at the Athletic Center. He has many brilliant ideas and knows us so well and has lots of energy and enthusiasm for expanding our financial aid program. He's been on the job 1 month and 1 week, and he's already been at multiple community outreach events, going to school, back to school nights, Latino parent nights. He co-led a Centro de Bienvenida. He has also been going around to all of our centers and meeting with staff because we have such turnover and doing education sessions about financial aid because we know we need to make sure we get people knowledgeable in the door when they walk in and promote it. Okay, next slide, please. So this past weekend and Monday of this week, the days kind of all blurred together, was winter registration. So we did produce individual activities guides for each center, as well as one combined guide. And we have combined guides that we're distributing to all of the libraries so that people, no matter where they are, can see all of the activities across the district. Registration was strong. We did not have winter registration in 2020, so we always like to look. And, you know, as expected, we know the numbers are going to be down. At this point, we have about a 12% drop off from where we were in fiscal year 19 on registration. The collection rate being down is more of a function of financial aid dollars catching up and people who registered but haven't paid yet. So that will catch up. And I just wanted to highlight that we know we have long waiting lists right now, and we're really paying attention to where those waiting lists are, and again, trying to do the best we can. Aquatics is a really painful part of waiting lists because we always had competition for aquatic spots. We always had competition, you know, for those smaller number for those spots. And now with a smaller number of pools open, that compression becomes even more magnified. We're seeing the same in some of our gymnastics classes as well. So our recreation folks are watching that closely and doing the best we can. On the next slide, please. So this is some exciting work that was being led in our sports and inclusion department, headed by Julie Rocha and Emily Kent. And they were looking at our healthcare partner program. So you may remember this is a program that we offer, and it's done in partnership with healthcare providers. So my insurance provider is Kaiser Permanente. They're one of the participants in this, and they offer the members of their programs the opportunity to participate in this and to get passes to come to THPRD facilities. So staff did a historical review of the program, looking at participation for 9 months. They looked at trying to identify process improvements and came up with a lot of more administrative things that we were doing to make it more efficient, to make it more manageable, and to spread the dollars and activities more evenly throughout all of our facilities, and worked on renegotiating the terms of the contracts. So we do expect to be bringing forward opportunities to renew contracts in January and to extend the Healthcare Partners Program. And we had 22,000 visits during that 9-month study between these 3 programs. And you can see how those break down between the 3. I want to say that we've also been talking about what a great opportunity this is for us to really market and promote this, really thinking about it under that access for all, because this is an opportunity where the patrons that we're serving can actually, you know, use the THPRD facilities under this program paid for by their provider. So for them, they're not out of pocket. So we're working on education and information to make sure that as we're registering our 55 and better, or they're buying monthly passes, that we're really making sure they're aware of this program and developing more educational tools, because it could really help stretch their opportunities to participate even further. We're super excited about that. On the next slide, just a quick update on a process that I know you've been involved with and following really closely. This too is led by Julie Rocha, and it's the affiliate review process. They concluded public outreach in November. They met with all of our currently affiliates, as well as invited every group that has ever expressed interest about becoming an affiliate and met with them to get their input as well. The stakeholder work, next steps are the stakeholder work group is meeting. They're revising the applications for affiliates. They're developing the scorecard that you've been discussing as a tool, and they're finalizing policy recommendations. And we expect this work will come back to the board in the spring. On the next slide. After school care. So just briefly following up on what board member Tia shared, Mayor Beatty held a summit last week. It was really exciting to see all the partners come together and to express their commitment and enthusiasm to finding solutions to expand after school care. And from that, we really took charge that we have the responsibility to go back to the school district, come up with some more exciting options. And there's a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of excitement going into how can we structure a partnership to help expand after school opportunities and really leverage the power and the opportunity of all the organizations involved. So lots of discussions, lots of ideas, and I know that staff are going to be getting together over the next few weeks and have more information for that group when we meet again, I think in the new year. And now on the next slide, which I think is the final one, is looking to budget preparation for the next fiscal year. So yeah, no joke, it is always that season. It's budget season. And while we are without a chief financial officer at the time, we have an awesome team and a solid plan to manage our budget process. We are having literally our budget kickoff for staff tomorrow. This is the meeting where we share the priorities. We talk about the details of preparing your budget, share big picture items. We've calendarized out and have all the information being packaged and put together for when we submit our budgets to our managers, then to directors, and then our normal internal processes for reviewing and checking those budget submissions, all gearing up for that first work session in April. So the team is ready, they're prepared, they've got everything ready to go, and yay, we're ready to jump into budget season again. So, that is not all the work happening in a district, but it's a quick snapshot, and I think I stuck to the time Doug gave me. So thank you to all our colleagues, and if you have really tough questions, Doug wants them. Otherwise, I'm happy to take the easy ones.
Thank you, Holly. What a great presentation. Does any of my board members have questions? No, I see no's. Okay, I have a question as usual. Or Alfredo has a question. He can go first. Go ahead, Alfredo.
Thanks. Holly, I really appreciated the update on the financial aid position. I was just curious what the, if you could, I'm sure you've probably told me, but what the history of that position was and how long has it been open? And I was just curious.
Yeah, so that position is a newer position to the district. We had a part-time person in financial aid for many, many years, and it had been one of those part-time 29-hour positions. And before the pandemic, we were very lucky, the fiscal year right before, and we asked for a full-time position. And part of that was to accomplish many of the ideas that were came out of what was then called the scholarship assessment. It was an assessment of our scholarship program where we heard loud and clear, we needed to do a lot more community engagement. We needed to have a person out in the community helping people. We need to have tools like Centro de Bienvenida. We need to expand that, have more pre-registration activities. We needed more partnerships with community-based organizations. And so what that did is that necessitated creating what was a half-time position into a full-time. So half the responsibility is processing the paperwork and getting people entered into the system and all that administrative stuff that has to happen. And the other half is the community engagement building side of it. So we got the position filled. We had someone in there for about 6 months. And she ended up moving to Texas, and her last day with the district was about a week before the COVID shutdown in March of 2020. And so as a cost saving measure, and honestly to save jobs, it's easier when you have an unfilled position to say we're going to keep the position but not fill it. And so I just had to take that step. And for a year and a half, we had the position vacant. Shout out to Lulu and to Jaspreet, who on top of everything else they did all that administrative processing for financial aid. And now we have one back. So when we got the position, we had a goal to expand participation in financial aid by 20%. We had a goal that the person in it can participate in at least 10 different outreach and community events a month, which they always do. That's easy to meet that mark. And then we have specific goals and expectations around expanding partnerships and expanding more pre-registration activities to promote financial aid. So really expect a lot more work in this area over the next year, and we're super excited.
Yeah, that makes two of us. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, Holly, I wanted to go back to registration. You know how we said that it was down by 12%, but is it down by 12% because we also are not listing as many programs or classes? Or is it down 12% like overall registration, of what we have?
That is a great question. And what I can say is the data is Sabrina helps curate and cultivate that data for us. And she's very clear about apples to apples. So that comparison is the open facilities in 2019 to the open facilities in 2021. We took out the closed facility numbers so that you just saw an apples to apples comparison.
Okay, but even like at like the aquatic center, we're offering less programs, right, than we did in 2019. Are those taken out also? I just wanted,
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out if that 12% is just because we're lacking the availability, or if it's like a 12% interest drop, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it has also less opportunities available. So you're
Okay.
right to say that that's a factor into it.
Okay, perfect. And then so obviously I went through registration with my family. We got one of 3 kids into swim class, but we're so thrilled to get at least one of them in them. But as the next morning, right at 8:05, of course I get all these texts from all these people and all these mom groups that I'm in complaining. The biggest thing was that a lot of them were like, how can it already be full or waitlisted when registration hasn't even happened yet, right? Like a lot of people, and some people were not savvy enough to see. If you click the details, then it tells you there's no teacher for that class, which is why, right? So if you're savvy enough, which I've done this for so many years, you know that when you register, you're going to try to register for the ones that don't have that label in yet. But if you're right, because that one specifically has a teacher, but lots of people are not that savvy. And so I was trying to figure, or I don't know if when we go through our next round of registration, because I don't anticipate we'll be able to fill 150 spots before summer, but that it says full waitlisted in that thing, and it's very confusing to a lot of people because they're like, how did everybody get this class before I did? How did people register even before registration was open and all that kind of stuff? So I don't know if we need a different wording about this is a potential class, please still waitlist, because people are just like, I'm not going to waitlist. Like if in the first 2 minutes it's already full, there's no point in at minute 10 to waitlist, and so they don't, and then they miss out. So I don't know if when we go through registration again, if there's a different wording we can use to call out ones that are actually full and have a wait list versus one that we just need a teacher and then 12 of you will get a spot, So
Yeah, I totally, I understand now exactly what you're saying. I'm not the registration system expert, but I definitely, Sabrina and Clint are on the line, so I know they're listening as well. And we'll definitely look at that because that is a really good suggestion and point. So we'll take a look at that and we'll report back to you what we can do.
Perfect, sounds good. I know our registration system is like kind of archaic and we can't do very much with it, but I think that in itself of just like there is no teacher, but please wait list so we can create the class is something better than full or waitlisted. That causes a lot of confusion for people. So
Thank you. That's really good point.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Always energetic and perfect as usual. Okay. We will go to 2008 bond program update. Gary and Bruce.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Barbrash, Nature and Trails Manager for the Park District, and I'm here tonight with Gary Keck, our Design and Development Manager, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about the 2008 bond measure. Next slide, please. Just to give you a little bit of information from the Wayback Machine. The bond measure was passed in 2008, and some of you will recall this, some of you might be new information. The bond was exclusively for capital improvement, so we couldn't use it for staffing or for ongoing labor, or we could use it for staffing towards the bond, but not, for example, to push a lawnmower on a site that we restored. So next slide, please. We did a variety of different types of projects. We did acquisition in natural areas, restoration of natural areas. We expanded a number of existing facilities. We purchased new land for parks, and we also added new amenities in existing parks or on some of the new parks, including things like sports fields and different recreational things like playgrounds. We also connected quite a few gaps in our regional trail system. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit tonight in detail about the natural resources part of the bond, and then Gary will move on to some of the development projects. Next slide, please. So a big chunk of the natural resources funds were dedicated to acquisition, and we completed almost $9 million worth of acquisitions, and we also transferred some money from the Natural Resources Restoration Fund into the acquisition fund because it was so important. So at this point in time, we are not actively pursuing any acquisitions with bond funds because we're simply done. Next slide, please. Approximately $3.75 million were allocated to natural resource restoration projects. And we have about a third of those funds remaining. Next slide, please. A typical natural resource restoration project involves staff going out to the site, sometimes with consultants, and doing some planning, figuring out how do we make those natural areas better, whether that's removal of non-native plants or an installation of native plants or readjusting streams or other features that were influenced by people and maybe not in the best way. The thing that happens after that is a site preparation phase and then some kind of a construction or planting phase, followed by what we call an establishment phase, where we make sure that the investment we made really has a chance to take hold and thrive on its own. After we go through this whole cycle, it generally lasts from 3 to 5 years, depending on the intensity of the effort. Next slide, please. We have kind of had a couple of waves of spending over time just because of the cyclical nature of the work that we've done. The last few years, we have been trending up in the expenditures, as you can see on this chart here. And I anticipate that we will keep spending money at a pretty good clip, although probably not as much as we did in 2021. That was sort of a peak year for various reasons. Next slide, please. At this point in time, among the remaining funds that we have left, I've kind of categorized the projects that we have into 3 categories. One are critical projects. They're super important projects that can only really be done if we have a large amount of money available. And a good example of this is the Raleigh Park Stream Enhancement Project, where we're changing the course of the stream a little bit and doing some significant enhancements to both daylight the stream, to take it out of a pipe essentially, as well as to restore some erosion that you see in the picture on the left. There are a number of projects that we're calling preferred projects that remain. They're things that are underway. They will enhance existing properties, but if we had to, we could stop them where they are and kind of make the best of what we've completed and just take over the remaining efforts with staff labor. And then the last piece is what I would call available funds. These are projects that have started or possibly are on hold for various reasons, and the funding is very malleable in that we could do something different with it. Next slide, please. And when we look at the remaining amounts, so the big pie graph on the left is everything that we have. And then among the remaining funds, you can see those three categories that I talked about on the far right side there. Next slide, please. So I'm not here tonight to make a specific ask, but some of the things that we are thinking about are trying to complete spending at the biggest sites, in particular at the Bronson Creek Greenway at Laidlaw. This is a 25-acre parcel up in the north part of the district. And it's one of those projects that's really important ecologically, and it's a really important kind of keystone property that connects a number of other properties that we've acquired. Staff are considering compressing the timeline of all the preferred projects so that we finish those by 2023. And then the last thing is we're contemplating, and this is where we will eventually ask the board for your input about whether you think we should reallocate some of the remaining funds towards something like acquisition, or whether you want to stay the course with projects that potentially have started or are possibly on the books. So there'll be a time for questions at the end, unless someone has an urgent question now. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it off to Gary. Okay, Gary, take it away.
All right, thank you, Bruce. We'll go. If we can go to the next slide.
Skip this one.
Okay, Jessica, we can go to the next slide. So the Design and Development Department has completed 51 projects in the bond program over the last 13 years. The chart here shows you the different types of projects we've been working on and the number of projects in each category. And you can see, as Bruce mentioned, we've worked on new and redeveloped community parks and neighborhood parks. We've built trails, we've replaced play structures, we've done several facility upgrades and facility expansions. And as you can see, we're down to the last two projects. So we're pretty excited. It's been a long road, and we've got the last two started. So on the next slide, I'll go over those real quick with you. So the remaining two projects, on the left there, we've got the Mountain View Champions Park, where we're putting in a multi-purpose sport court. And on the right, you see it's the Cedar Hills Park redevelopment. This project still has some work to get done in the right-of-way improvements along Walker Road. That'll help us close out that project. Now, as I mentioned, both these projects are underway. Staff, we anticipate bringing the concept plan for the Mountain View Champions Park to the board for your review, and we hope approval this coming spring. We recently completed the first open house, and we actually presented to the Parks Advisory Committee recently to seek their input. And that project in particular is funded through bond and SDC funds. We have just over $945,000 for that project, and our early cost estimates do show we're sitting around 1.3 million. So we do have a little bit of a shortfall on that one early in the design process. And at Cedar Hills Park, as I mentioned, we're required to complete the right-of-way adjustments because Washington County is looking for future expansion on Walker Road. And that project's funded through SDCs right now. And we're in early conversations with the county to review all the options that we can think of to meet this right-of-way requirements, including fee in lieu, where we just give them the amount it would take to do the improvements so they do it in the future, maybe when they expand the road. But early estimates on that, and after our conversations with the county, we do anticipate that project having a little bit of a shortfall as well in the early stages. And if we can go to the next slide, Jessica. So, as Bruce mentioned, we are winding down with the bond program, and the good news is we're seeing some savings in a couple of categories that could help us out. As of November, we see a savings of, you can see, just over $326,000 in the administration category. And then we're anticipating $135,000 of savings in the youth athletic field category. And that's from the recently completed Unity Park project. We came in under budget on that. So that funding's available. So if we go to the next slide, Jessica, there you go. So staff are looking for board support to reallocate the administration category savings to the Cedar Hills Park redevelopment project. This would help us utilize the remaining 2008 bond funds in a timely manner, and it meets the district's obligation to expend the bond funds. It'll also help us reduce the amount of SDCs needed to fund that project. So we save SDC as well, which is great. If the board supports this effort, staff will return in January with a formal request to reallocate. On the right there, you can see we're also recommending just to leave the Unity Park savings in the youth athletic field category so that we can use it to augment the Mountain View Champions Park multi-purpose sport court. So if we move the next slide, Jessica, that'll be our last slide. So as Bruce mentioned, we're not here with a formal action tonight. Staff seeking board support and input on how to utilize the remaining funding. And we'll return in January, like I mentioned, with a formal request. But that concludes our presentation. So Bruce and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Heidi?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. And just as a follow-up from our public testimony earlier about Cooper Mountain, can you explain how this cannot be utilized, or can it be utilized, these funds, to support those interests there? I think it's good for us to have that on the record and as a team to understand that too.
Yeah, I guess let me take a shot at it. Certainly on the natural resources side, a transition of the restoration funds that Bruce was suggesting towards acquisition, that would make it viable to be used in the Cooper Mountain where appropriate, you know, where there are natural resource holdings, and we know there are there. So
I think a key question ultimately is we like Metro are part of a willing seller program, and we can only expend those funds if someone wishes to sell us the land. I will say generally to date, that has been a challenging conversation, which has been had on more than one occasion.
Thank you for the clarification. It's helpful.
Anyone else has questions? I wanted to clarify exactly what falls into the administrative category. I mean, the youth field is like pretty like easy to
Sure.
think about, but yeah.
Yeah, administration was really multifaceted. Some of it was to enable staff support of projects,
Okay.
but also as well was the critical function of the financing components. So any of the aspects of hiring attorneys, and as you know, we've gone through multiple refinances, which have saved the taxpayers a ton of money as well.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so they're, you know, we were fortunate because we didn't have a lot allocated there in comparison to many agencies that float bonds. But in the end, we're able not only to save the taxpayers' funds, but also we stayed well within our proportion ratio within that category.
And then Gary, you said or something about just giving the money to the city or whatever for the Cedar Mill to have them do it later, or can you clarify that one more time? Is that different than what we're doing right now? Or is this money reallocating that's what we're trying to do?
Yeah, the numbers I gave in the board member, that's the conservative if we had to do it ourselves. That includes, you know, our staff time, permitting, and building it right now, whatever we end up doing. And what we're looking at is there's a couple of options. It's the water quality pond that is intruding into the right of way. It's the slope down to the road. As part of the project, we had to dedicate 20 feet to the county for their road widening. So they looked at it late in the game and realized that was happening. So we might need to put a wall in there is the worst case, and that's what that budget included. The fee in lieu would probably save us money in the long run because it wouldn't include, you know, our staff time and our soft costs. It would be whatever the cost of the construction is for the county to do the work. But it's a fee in lieu option. It's on the table right now. We don't have a for sure, yes, they're interested in that. The thought is to take it through 50% design right now, the park district. Then we'll have a good cost estimate and we'll have a design of what that could look like, and we can negotiate with the county on the cost at that point. And we would give them, like you said, the money, and they would hold it until they build out in the future, which they don't
Yeah,
know. That's the other thing, is they don't know when they're going to build it out.
Yeah, and we've done this through a variety of projects. It's actually a more efficient way, less impact to the public as well, because you're not closing Walker numerous times.
No, yeah, I totally agree. So I'm just trying to clarify. So is that number that we were allocating, is that towards the fee in lieu, or are we saying that that's the number if we were to do it in-house?
That's the conservative number. If we were going to do it in-house, we want to make sure we come to you with the full what we would want, so we don't have to come back again, right?
But if we're supportive of that fee in lieu, then we don't need that. Sorry, I'm a little bit confused. Then we don't need
Okay.
that reallocation?
Yeah, a better way of saying it is we may not need it.
Okay.
We think that sum should be more than enough, but again, it'll be appropriately spent. So whatever isn't used will be sitting there, and we'll be
Gotcha.
back to the board.
Okay.
Yeah, the request is for us to transfer the money from the administration category, which you just mentioned, into the Cedar Hills project. And whether we spend it fee in lieu or we build it out, that's
Gotcha.
yet to be seen, but we need to move it officially from one category to the next
Be able to spend.
to be able to spend
Yeah.
it. So that's
Gotcha.
what we're looking to do. So that
Okay.
when we do that, it saves SDCs, because right now we have SDCs allocated. So we would just reduce the SDCs, goes back in the SDC fund,
Yeah.
and use the rest of the bond money is our thought.
Gotcha. Felicita?
I think I slightly got more confused, but I was going to say that I think y'all kind of need a thumbs up. So I was going to give my thumbs up. This is exciting, and I love that with the bond, like we do these really big projects that we can talk about like across the district that impacts everybody and the entire community. But we also do these smaller ones that people can look to within their own neighborhood. And I have no doubt that it's really challenging to balance all that. So thank you. But I'm excited by everything I hear. So thumbs up.
Thank you.
Great. We'll bring it back next month.
Thank you. Okay, so next we have General Manager's report.
You bet. First up is going to be Bruce. Well, we'll hear from Bruce several times.
Well, good evening again. It's exciting to be here. It's been a while since I've been at a board meeting, and tonight you get a whole lot of me and the team, I should say. So if you think back a couple of weeks into November, the week of November 8th, we had about 3 inches of rain recorded, depending on which location you were at. And we received about 6.5 inches of rain in that month, and usually we average 5 inches. So 3 inches is a pretty darn good amount of rain for our community. And our frontline staff are really dynamic. They respond quickly and professionally to keep our facilities, our parks, and our trails safe and ready for public use, at least once the water goes down. They also do certain things proactively to make sure that that when the time is right, we are kind of preparing for these events. I've got Crystal Durbeck, the Nature and Trail Specialist, here tonight, as well as James Quatch, the Park Maintenance Coordinator, and they're going to share a little bit about what they and their teams do out in the field.
It's good evening, everyone. So my name is James Quat from Park Maintenance Coordinator North. So during summer transition into fall and winter, so we do preparation for the storm and winter. Like we have really high wind and rainy season. So before that, we do clearing the cover, the ranch. Also, we do pruning and removing hazard tree. So next slide, please. So when in the winter time, sometimes we had a very heavy raining. So we do a modify to contains playground chip and improving the drainage at specific site, like in the slide you can see it. So next slide, please. So not only the park and then building maintenance team also is do respond for the winter. They do sealing the window around the pipe. They clean the gutter and downspout, and then they prevent the water leaking into the facility. So follow next slide, please. So the nature of the winter is high wind and rainy. We do site inspection every single time before and after the event. So we do inspect and address any concern, safety concern in the park and in the trail, in the field. Also, we have a storm response, include the park check for every single site high use. Just set out like Natural Hill, Fullerton Hill Natural Park, Lower Mean Hardwood, and Jordan Wood, for example. So after every single event and high wind like that, we also clean, blow the leaf, remove any tree downs, or sometimes the slim is broken and hanging up there in the tree. So we call it response team, storm response team. They just making sure we quick respond and clean it out. So for the next slide, Crystal will be help me go with that, the tree down to the trail. Crystal, please.
Hi, everybody. Good to be here. Yeah, so this slide is just kind of showing a tree, one of the 5 trees that fell in the nature park on the 4th of November this year, kind of following one of the big storms that we had. Just an example of kind of some of the cleanup efforts that we do following up after a storm. Staff they really know their sites, so they kind of know the sites that are most likely to have tree fall, and they'll kind of go in afterwards and check those sites and see, yeah, we kind of know this is an area that has a lot of trees that could come down. Let's check in and make sure there isn't anything down on the trail or any potential hazards, and then go in and clean that up. And it's been pretty effective. Next slide. This is just an example of a down tree on a soft surface trail, just to give you an example of kind of the variety of different trails that we're dealing with district-wide. And again, just a lot of areas that are very, lots of canopy, lots of trees, just kind of areas that we know that there's probably going to be something down. And we're also responding to calls that come in. Oftentimes this happens even sometimes a couple days after a storm, we might get some calls in, since we may not see every single site all in one day. So sometimes it's a couple days of cleanup efforts, just depending on like the size of the storm, the severity, how much wind there was, that sort of thing. Next slide. Sometimes we will close trails temporarily if there's a lot of cleanup that's needed. We're using chainsaws and hand tools that could be considered hazardous if people were walking around them or trying to use the park around them. So we will maybe temporarily close a trail just for public safety while we clean it up. And then after the cleanup is complete, we'll open the trail again once it's safe for passage. Next slide. This is just a picture for comparison after one of the big storms. Fano Creek Trail can get pretty high water on it. And then afterwards, it's kind of up to us to go in and do some cleanup. So we might do maybe some pressure washing to get any mud off of the trail. We're doing leaf blowing. We're just cleaning it up, making sure it's safe. There's nothing slippery that people could slip on, and just keeping it nice and clean and dry as possible after the storm. But obviously during the storm, there's not a whole lot we can do in this type of condition. Next slide. And this is just another example of high water. In certain locations, we may, if we get annual high water and it's a regular thing, we may put up some permanent signage that just kind of lets people know you may encounter some high water in this park. This is Greenway Park, just as an example of a place that is kind of known for high water. And, you know, we don't put those signs everywhere, but it might be somewhere that you might see this on an annual basis, just to kind of let people know, so that they know that we're aware, and we're still going in afterwards and cleaning up the trails and doing our kind of regular routine maintenance afterwards. And yeah, I think that might be the last slide. And any questions?
Heidi?
Just a cute little remark about other aquatic areas in our facilities. Thank you for the work that you do. I know that the tree and flood water maintenance is a lot, especially this time of the year. And I know we have a lot of patrons that love these areas, and when we have to clean them up or they're flooded, that makes it difficult, but it is also part of the work we do. So thank you for all that you do. It's tough, and a little hello to I think we saw Trace in the background there.
Hiding under the table now.
Very cute.
Alfredo?
Yeah, just wanted to thank James, Crystal, and Bruce for your presentation. The only note I would have is just I think a lot of that work, especially in the winter time, to keep our trails clear and you know, is probably taken for granted by us, the trail user. And I think it's just great to share that work that you're doing. And I've been running a lot more on the trails, and I'm sure quite a few of the ones I've been crisscrossing have taken a lot of hours of work to clear. So I think any chance we can share that with the public, and I'm sure we already do to a certain extent, is awesome. So thank you all.
Thank you, Alfredo.
James, did you want to share something?
Yeah, so this the first time I had a meeting with the board, so really appreciate, and then thank you so much for having me in the board meeting. And then please forgive me if something like nerve-wracking you guys can hear through my voice. So thank you very much.
You did great, James. You did great. It was a great presentation by all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, staff. And I'd just like to emphasize one thing that I'm excited about. I know if Aisha was here, she'd be excited to share this as well, is that these work groups are out in the field along with our planning and our design development staff. We're really trying to work together in the Park Services Division to kind of address real life situations like you see here that are kind of on the ground, as well as thinking more and more proactively about how do we acquire and plan for and construct new parks so they can be more sustainable and in the best locations to kind of balance environmental concerns and potential challenges, for example, like the flooded trails, with what land we have available and how we put all those pieces together to provide access to the public and all the wonderful services that are available to them. So that concludes our presentation for this portion, and I'll hand it back to Doug.
Great. Well, I'm not going to waste much time here because I'm going to hand it right back to Bruce for lake management.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. So the Park District has quite a few water bodies that we manage. Among them are 3 man-made lakes. And the lakes are a source of ongoing interest and in some cases passion for our community. They're interesting spaces because they are man-made. They offer different opportunities than some of our straight up natural areas. And then they also come with a different set of expectations from the community. And it's really interesting to see, and how staff steward these resources really impacts the perception and what uses become available to our community. We've had a lot of questions in recent years, especially this last year, about what are you doing with the lakes, and can you do this and can you do that? And we're really trying to figure out how do we better serve the patron by evaluating the current lake management as well as what are the future options. And what we're trying to think about are what are the ecological possibilities, what are the recreation possibilities, and then what do we do about the equity piece. So next slide, please. It probably goes without saying, but despite being man-made, the lakes are really important for wildlife. We have a huge number of birds that use the lakes. We have fish of various sorts, native turtles. And so they're really wonderful opportunities both for the wildlife watching side, but as well as for the critters that live out there. Next slide, please. Recreation is a huge part of the lakes. People love walking around them. All three of the lakes have some form of trail or access either around or on their edges. And then fishing, at least seasonally, usually in the spring, is kind of a big deal. Some folks will come out throughout the year, just cast a line just for kicks, but the lakes are actively stocked, usually April and May, give or take, depending on the weather and the location. Next slide, please. So along with all the wonderful things they provide, there are a number of challenges. And in some ways, the first one is what I would probably say is aesthetics. There's always a concern from some members of the community that the lakes don't look like they always look. So with, for example, a swimming pool or a turf field, we can keep a pretty consistent look going all the time. But because lakes are natural in a lot of ways and they are living, things change from year to year, month to month, and we get things like rooted as well as floating plants growing in or on the lakes, and it changes the look from the smooth, shiny picture that you might have seen earlier in the presentation. In some years, we have done, at least at Bethany Lake, aquatic plant harvesting, and this picture on the right is a boat that's sort of like an aquatic lawnmower. It picks plants up off the surface, it puts them on a conveyor belt, and then we dispose of those plants off-site. It's a pretty costly and labor-intensive thing to manage, and we have done it occasionally, but not consistently. The other two lakes, Commonwealth Lake and Progress Lake, aren't really suitable for the activity for various reasons. Next slide, please. Another challenge, again, with a man-made structure is that people expect it to look a certain way, but over time, we get things like erosion on the edges, and staff have worked pretty hard to try and maintain that edge. We've done that with things like rocks, we've done it with plants, and again, it's dynamic, right? The way the lake looks today versus 20 years ago is different, and some folks remember that and some folks don't, and that becomes an interesting educational piece for us. Next slide, please. And probably the biggest and newest challenge for us has been climate change. There's been a lot less rainfall and a lot less water in the lakes. This is Bethany Lake looking to the west. And in a normal year during the summer, you would see the scene on the left. The outlined area in red is a patch of lilies that's the same in each picture. Here on the right, you can see by August, there was about half the normal amount of water in the lake. And we got quite a few calls as if folks thought we could turn on the faucet and refill the lake. And unfortunately, in this case, we can't because the water is all fed by rainwater and water that streams down from the neighborhoods upstream. Next slide, please. So our public is extremely interested in lakes and in water management in general, all the topics that I mentioned. One of the challenges we have as staff is we often get and hear from comments from the loudest and most vocal members of our community, but we don't necessarily know what the whole community thinks about things. So what we intend to do over the next 3 years is to go out and do some wider interaction with the public. We're going to do a variety of surveys, in-person activities, and educational activities with some of our partners to really get a sense of what does the whole community want, what are the recreational desires they have, what kind of natural things would they like to see out there. Next slide, please. And we'll do the same basic process that at each of the 3 lakes, hopefully building on what we've learned as we go from lake to lake. with the idea that once we understand what the public wants, we can better spend limited resources to provide those things. And then we can, create plans and then implement the plans. So that's the conclusion of my presentation, but I'm happy to entertain questions.
Felicita?
Thanks, Bruce. Super exciting. Yay.
Thank
I was
you.
going to say that I know I think and I know that if we lead with racial equity in our education, in our survey, in our planning, then we know that the recreational opportunities will be reflective of those diverse communities, right? So it sounds like I'm saying I'm excited and I see the intentionality and I appreciate it. So go team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
You're very welcome.
All right. Is there any more in that general manager's report?
No, that is it. We're ready to move on the budget committee.
Yay.
I'll go ahead and take the lead on this one. So last week, December 1st, we had an opportunity. So back up a little bit. We have 2 vacant spots on our budget committee. And so saw applicants from the community who were interested in applying and interviewed with a few of us for those 2 spots. Barbie, myself, and Suzanne Lenine, who is also on our budget committee as a community member, and Doug were available and participated in interviews. Doug was there as our logistics person. And we had 3 exceptional candidates. We were very impressed with all 3 candidates. Sadly, we only have 2 positions. And so we narrowed down unanimously who will be filling those positions. And I just want to say, and I know Barbie may want to say a little bit too, just want to say that I was so impressed by the skill sets and the experience of these 3 candidates. And I really think that we chose of the 2 that will vote to appoint and hopefully will decide to serve, that their skill sets really are what we need at this point in time, as we've had so much transition with our budget committee and with our budget. And so we're going to be seeking your vote for these 2 candidates. And Barbie, I'll leave it to you.
Oh, goodness. Okay. I'm not sure that I have a whole heck of a lot more to add than what you've just shared. From a process point of view, I also just really appreciate having been in the hot seat myself. I want to just thank the staff for refining this process and being able to provide some of the questions to our candidates in advance. And I really appreciate that. It feels like it sets a stage for folks to really come forward and do, feel confident that they can demonstrate their best selves in a situation that, of course, you're joining the line and here's the entire committee and now we've got the questions for you. So I just want to thank staff for the thoughtfulness and the intentionality behind the actual process itself. I'm not sure for next steps here, technically speaking, do we make the motion and share with our folks? Is that how we?
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
so I've got to.
If you would like to make the motion, that would be great.
Let me click over. Give me just 1 second here.
Or I'm happy to as well.
If you've got the vernacular handy, I say if you want to take it, that would be great.
So, on behalf of those of us who interviewed these folks and talked about their credentials and moving forward with our budget committee, I would like to move that the Board of Directors approve Resolution 2021-17, appointing both Christopher Howard and Natalie Zenner to the Budget Committee, each for a term of 3 years.
Do I second?
Jessica, can you please take the vote?
Alfredo Moreno,
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Barbie Minor,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Tia Ping.
Yes.
Thank you all. I'm really excited about the folks we have serving on our budget committee. We've had a little bit of turnover over time, but really strong individuals with great finance, procurement, long-term planning expertise that will really benefit us over time. So thank you.
Perfect. And then next we have the resolution appointing advisory committee members. I think Holly is presenting.
You bet.
Yes, just a really brief update for you, and I want to express my gratitude to my colleagues who are also committee liaisons to advisory committees, Bruce Barbarash, who's back again, and Keith Watson, who was unable to be with us this evening. But just a recap, we had a wonderful turnout for advisory committee applications. We received 88 applications overall this year. For context, in previous years, an average has been around 25 to 40 at our highest. So we're really pleased with that turnout. We did a really extensive process to review the applications. We had our existing members participate in those interviews because we wanted them to be able, the applicants to be able to interview us as well to see how the fit worked for them. And we all made sure to be very inclusive and send the questions ahead of time as well, to Barbie's point about how helpful that is to allow people to bring their best selves to the interview process. So the recommendation before you is to fill several open positions on each of our 3 advisory committees. The one for Nature and Trails is a little bit different. As you'll remember, because of the pandemic, we extended people for a year, so that kind of got our adjustments out of order. And there are several people that, to keep our committee stocked and not have everyone leave at once, for that one, we need to have some returning members appointed for 1 year to keep an even balance among advisory committee members. And finally, I just want to say that I express my gratitude to Melissa Markham, who our volunteer coordinator, who has been in great contact with all of our applicants who were not selected for an advisory committee recommendation. We've been back in touch with these folks, giving them lots of information and opportunities about other volunteer opportunities in the district. And Melissa and I have been in discussions about how we'll use this as a pool to continue to talk about volunteer opportunities at the district and continue to communicate directly with folks that not selected. So that is the recommendation before you, to appoint all of these wonderful folks to our advisory committees.
Do I have a motion?
Yeah, this is Felicita. Happy to make a motion. I move that the Board of Directors approve Resolution 2021-18 appointing advisory committee members.
And this is Alfredo to second.
Jessica?
Barbie Minor.
Sorry, Mike. Yes.
Heidi Edwards.
Yes.
Alfredo Moreno.
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco.
Yes.
Tia Ping.
Yes. Great. And unless I missed something, I think that's the end of our meeting, right?
You bet.
All right. Thank you everyone for a great night. Thank you to all of our presenters, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.